So the Owl House is back, and if I sound just as sorrowful as I am excited about that, it's because I am, because this is the final season of the show, and it's also the season that was butchered by Disney through the show's cancellation. Instead of a full season 3, we're getting 3 specials. You all know this, but I'm going to go over it for anybody who might be popping in who's not familiar with the situation. We're getting 3 specials. They're longish specials. And we're going to get most of the late game climactic stuff that would have been in a potential season 3 with this same plot. But this being the first of those specials, thanks to them, is a little mixed. I enjoyed watching it a lot. I want to be clear about that right out the gate. I thought it was very good for what they were given, but especially on rewatch, without the hype of watching it the first time, there was so much here that just left me feeling empty. Now, that's not to say, again, that this is bad at all. It's still a good, let's say, episode. It'll probably be broken down into separate episodes at some point, but let's say episode of the show. But this episode contains multiple montages. And by multiple, I mean, I guess technically only 2, but then there's like an album full of photos that the kids took during the time skip that happens during the first montage of the episode that I consider to be a third one. Multiple montages of what could have been whole episodes of the show. Character-driven episodes, where the characters have little adventures and plots are developed rather than kind of having to all be dumped in together in order to fit in this special's 44-minute runtime. Because the main plot of this one is that after getting Camila caught up on everything that's gone on, she takes them in and they spend, based on context clues in the episode, almost an entire year in the human realm living with her. They all become like one big family, and Camila does a fantastic job of raising them, even staying up late at night to make sure that she remembers everything that needs to be done for these very special children that she barely understands. Meanwhile, as time to return to school creeps up on the kids, they start to try to use the little house behind the Nosita house to create a new portal to try to get back. And after Luce starts to go back to school, the others basically spend their time back there, hanging out and trying to work out what to do next. They're incredibly grateful for what Camila's done for them and want to give something back to her and Luce. Meanwhile, Luce is, like, she just looks so exhausted through this entire thing because she's living on edge, worried what her friends will think of her if they ever discover that technically she helped the Day of Unity happen by introducing Philip to the Collector. And the only person she can really confide in about it is Hunter, because he already knows, and because he has a secret too, that he's the Grimwalker clone of a witch hunter. Someone who carries that legacy with him, and while he would never be that person himself that he knows of, I think Caleb was a far more nuanced character than witch hunter. The others might not realize that, and he might lose them. So when Flapjack seems to be worked up about something, and it leads to Hunter seeing Belos here in the human world with him, he goes to Luce, and the two of them try to find Belos and potentially stop him from whatever he's doing without telling the others, while the others are on their own quest to find Titan's blood without telling Luce, so that she doesn't know what's going on until the very, very end. Meanwhile, Luce is keeping everything bottled up herself. She doesn't want to disappoint her friends. She doesn't want to disappoint her mom, because she did still make that promise to stay in the human realm once she returned. So she's been making video diaries, and we find out she's been making video diaries basically since her father passed away, which is cool because it tells us why she fell into doing that in the demon realm too. It's very, very neat detail, very neat character detail. And so rather than just talking to her mom, like she does a little bit, she asks her mom at one point why she's not mad at her. But like rather than talking to her mom about the nuances of this stuff, she's keeping it bottled up, and Camila has to accidentally happen upon it by accidentally turning on Luce's laptop. And like everything works out in the end in that regard, so far anyway. But like, I just can't. It's very well done. Like, you have all these different groups of characters who, while being together and caring about each other, and being such a strong little found family unit, they're still keeping things separate from each other because they feel like they bear individual responsibility for these different things. Rather than just talking, they try to bear these things themselves or amongst their little groups within the group. And if they just communicated, things might have gone so much better by the end. And like, considering that we're getting like 2 more specials after this, and that's going to be the climax of the season, they're going to keep that mostly intact. All of this would have been probably basically just like the first half of a theoretical full-length season 3 with this plot. Couldn't you imagine all that stuff being like the subplot running through a bunch of really fantastic character-driven Human Realm season 3 episodes rather than just kind of crammed into this special? Like, it still works. It still works here. There's a lot of really strong payoff, and no matter how condensed things ever seem to feel, the voice acting is still so spot on, and the art direction is so good. Like, these characters look like they've lived here for a while, and the places they live in look lived in. They really sell it. All of that works, but it would have worked better still if we had gotten to see it happen. And we never will. And so the fact that it still works so well does not make me feel better about the fact that that's never going to happen. And I do have a video plan. I might not end up doing it. I might end up repurposing it into something else, because I have talked about this in this review enough, I think, probably. But I'll do something with it. Maybe I'll sit down and try to figure out what I feel like each of the original, quote-unquote, Season 3 episodes plots might have been, or something like that. It's such a great tragedy. This show is so amazing, and these voice actors and these artists are so amazing. And it feels criminal. It feels wrong. It feels... I am hurt that I have lost time with them, because Disney has to be petty and bigoted and so pearl clutchy about its brand. It's just horrible. And there are things in here that certainly feel like leftover threads from what would have been a more drawn out and incrementative 3rd season. Like meeting that wannabe witch hunter guy whose name I don't remember again, and V interacting with some of the friends she had when she was posing as Luce briefly. Like, those things feel like they would have been episodes in and of themselves. And like, there's a conversation that Luce has with her mom in the car, and Camila asks about some takeout. Will this food be okay for the others? Do they need like blood or something because they're from the demon realm? And it was a funny conversation, don't get me wrong, but they've been in the human realm and she's been taking care of them for almost a year at this point. This is a conversation that would have happened very early in that timeline that they just decided to keep. And it does feel a little jarring sometimes. The absolute standouts, though, more than make up for any of that. Like, when I say this is good, I really do mean it. There's some immaculate stuff in here. Like, for example, while they're looking for Belos, Luce says to Hunter, he just says he wants to make sure everybody is safe, and she says, you know, that includes you. You're a family now. And it looks for a second like they're going to have one of those moments where he turns away because he's tearing up, but then he kind of swallows it. They move on with their day. So common and stuff, right? But no, he just starts bawling. He can't help it. And then he doesn't deny it. And then he and Luce lean on each other. And it's so good. It's such a good scene. And then there's a dream sequence where Camila is remembering, for lack of a better term, all of the times that she found Luce's unusual, quote-unquote, behavior charming, but how she was pressured to help her daughter to conform and reminded of the fact that she was bullied and more or less manipulated into trying to change someone that she didn't feel needed to change. And it really helps contextualize her choice at the beginning of the series to give that brochure to Luce and send her off to that camp. And it was just very artistic and very powerfully done. And then there's the haunted hayride with, I can't remember her name, the girl with the gap tooth. Something I would know about. Who might be one of my favorite characters. Like, she just really stands out, giving us the history of the Wittebane family. And we finally get confirmation of a bunch of stuff. Caleb was the older brother. He and Philip were orphans who came to town and got swept up in the town's witch hunting culture, but Caleb met a witch named Evelyn. Sounds like a very Cawthorn family name. And the story goes that she lured him in with her magical wiles. And the example given is literally Flapjack. Which means the Flapjack was either Evelyn's talisman or she made it for Caleb. And that Philip, young Philip, followed after them to try to save his brother. But again, I don't remember her name. The girl with the gap tooth says that to her it sounds like the older brother got a hot witch girlfriend and the younger brother was sad about it. Which I'm assuming is the more correct take. It's also reinforced here that they did have a way of getting back and forth, which brings us to what Amity and her group are doing. They're following this coded map to Titan's Blood, a coded map found in that little house. And we find out as all this is going on, and this may be part of the reason why Hunter didn't want to go to the others with the stuff about Belos and just went to Luce. He's been possessed by Belos, who has been possessing dead things and hanging around everybody. Apparently listening in and trying to get a feel for what he can use to manipulate them. And now he's possessed Hunter. And he uses Luce and Hunter and Flapjack to find this archway with Titan's blood buried near it. And the vial of Titan's blood has an Albert stopper on it, which is just more evidence of what we already know. And the archway can be used as a portal. It can be smeared with Titan's blood and used as a portal. And we've seen similar archways in the demon realm that might also be forgotten portals. It's possible that the portal door was only an attempt to create a portable version of this thing. And regardless of how I feel about how the plot threads are or aren't executed in this, whether I feel like it's a little rushed or there's a lot going on or whatever, everything does weave together beautifully by the end. Camila sees a video of Luce talking about how even though she finally found a place where all of her interests and skills and talents actually mean something, she's going to stay in the human realm like she promised, which causes her to realize that that's not what she wants for her daughter, so she goes looking for her, finding the others, tipping them off to the fact that they need to find Luce. So they go looking for Luce, so everyone is there to fight Belos in Hunter. Luce also has her magic back, because she's near enough to Titan's blood, which is interesting, because doing magic in proximity to Titan's blood doesn't seem to use it up. Or if it does so very slowly. So, assuming that they're able to find more sources of Titan's blood, like, I don't know, for example, drawing a few drops from a small Titan, maybe? Couldn't Luce, like, wear an amulet with Titan's blood in it to the human realm and do magic there? The implications of that are pretty darn cool. Also, an old theory that I had that I almost made a video about, and I'm mad that I didn't now, that now that his powers have awakened, maybe if King came with her to the human realm, she could do magic. Maybe she'd have to, like, adjust her glyphs to account for him or something somehow. But that might be true now, too. Like, she doesn't literally have to be standing on the body of the Titan to do glyph magic, is my point. But that's beside the point. They fight Belos, and unfortunately, Flapjack is gravely injured trying to fight Belos. But that gives Hunter the strength to fight back. And he injures himself by jumping into water and almost drowning, to the point that Belos then leaves his body. He escapes back to the demon realm, but he's out of Hunter. And Flapjack's able to use the last of his strength to bring Hunter back. And it's incredibly sad. And it's even sadder that the moment he wakes up, even though he already knows that Flapjack is dead, Hunter's first concern is to make sure everybody else is okay, because he's just a fantastic person. And then Camilla jumps right into the water to save him when he's drowning, without a second thought, while the others are trying to figure out what they can do. And then in the end, she goes back to the demon realm with them because she feels like it's her responsibility to help these children in this fight. She recognizes that they can fight it, but that they shouldn't have to do it alone. It's just perfect. It resolves everything in this entire, very compressed, roughly half a season so perfectly that any of the other points where things feel too compressed or a little messy, or like things are kind of piled on a little bit, it makes all of that feel better. It makes all of that feel justified. And so in the end, the whole thing works. And my God, the animation on Hunter Belos is haunting. Like, he somehow manages to look like Hunter, like some of the expressions we've seen on Hunter back when he was still as much the Golden Guard or more the Golden Guard than he is the person he is now. It looks like that, but also it looks like Belos. It's chilling. And he knows exactly which buttons to push to start to stir up shit within the group. He outs Luce for helping him find the Collector. He outs Hunter as a witch hunter. And even though their little found family survives all of that, he doesn't really get to them. It just reinforces how effortlessly toxic and manipulative he is, that he goes for the jugular like that without a second thought, just in the hopes of, at minimum, causing like a split second of confusion in his enemy's ranks. He's such a good character, and I'm so glad that it looks like he is going to continue to play a part in the story, rather than just being unceremoniously kicked from the narrative. In short, while I do have mixed feelings about this special, I do feel like it not being a special, that this season not being a series of 3 specials, would be for the best. This is really good. They use their time well. They tell a strong story, strong, compelling story that wraps up a bunch of character arcs very succinctly and very effectively with a lot of strong emotional payoff. And the animation is just so goddamn fantastic. And the voice acting is just as good. And the town of Graysfield, even though we don't see much of it, it feels so lived in and real by the time this is over. Just because they give us a bit more of its lore. There's even a callback joke in here during one of the montages to what felt like a one-off gag, like early in the series. That's just Like, I'd forgotten it was a thing. My chat had to remind me during the live watch-along. Like, as the episode was also reminding me, but still, same difference. It was very good. It was very good, while also reminding me that it could have been so much more. I absolutely think that if you've kept up with the show this long, you should watch this. If you're interested in the show, this probably isn't the best place to start if you haven't watched it, but if you've been following the show up to this point, don't give up on it just because it's been canceled. This was a strong start, and because I imagine, since the next two are going to be, let's say, adapting their plans for the climax of this story, rather than having to compress a whole big chunk of a season, I imagine the next two are going to be even better. Again, it's less than we could have gotten, but it's still worthy to be called part of this excellent show. All that said, though, guys, if you have seen the Owl House special episode, thanks to them, what did you think of it? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.